Hi, I'm Todd Jones, host of the podcast Pressbox Access. Here's a clip from my interview with Terence Moore. Terence recalls the working relationship that he had with Bobby Knight, a coach who thought most sports writers were no better than pond scum. Well, Terence, you seem to have a calming effect on a lot of notable hotheads. You mentioned Bobby Knight. You actually did have a pretty good relationship with Bobby, right?
I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. And I saw some wild stuff with Bobby Knight in my day. I mean, I was there that day when they were playing. I want to say it was Purdue, and the crowd started chanting an obscenity at Assembly Hall, which was unheard of at the time. And Bobby just runs over and grabs the microphone, says, "Hey, we don't do that stuff around here." He almost said something else, and then the crowd just stopped chanting. It's just different things you would see him do. But anyway, it was the mid 80s, and this was years later, and I'm working in Atlanta, and I had written a story. I'll get to that in a minute. So the phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and it's a woman, and she says, "Is Terence Moore there?" I said, "Yeah, this Terence." Says, "Hold the line for Coach Knight," and I'm thinking, Coach Knight. I'm trying to think. And here in Atlanta, what Coach Knight do I know? And at this time, I had not talked to Bobby Knight in probably 5 years. Easily 4 or 5 years. And sure enough, he picked up, he said, "Hey." I said, "Hey, how's it going, Coach?" He said, "Thanks a lot for the story." And I said, "What story?" He said, "Hold on." And at that point, I said, "Oh, geez, what did I do?" I thought maybe I'd written something.
Right.
And you know how it is, Todd, when you have these conversations with these guys, your mind, is it like people say your life flashes before your eyes? Everything you've ever written starts going through your head, like about that particular person. Like, see, I wrote that. I mean, is he upset? That was back in 19. I was like, what? So he comes back to the phone. He says, "The whip, the one about the whip." And I was like, "Oh, that one." And what he was referring to was he was being blasted. His Indiana team was at the NCAA tournament that year, and they had a player named Calbert Cheaney. And Bobby Knight was asked by one of the reporters, "How do you discipline your players?" And Bobby reached down underneath the table and pulled out a bullwhip and had Calbert Cheaney leaning over, and they had took a picture of him like he was getting ready to hit him with a bullwhip. And there was all these people writing these articles about Bobby Knight's are racist and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And I wrote a column saying that, you can say a lot of things about Bobby Knight, but he's not a racist. Trust me. I've dealt with Bobby Knight. I've talked to players about Bobby Knight. I don't see that. Never saw that, blah, blah, blah. So he thanked me for that. He gave me all of his telephone numbers, at least the ones he had at that time, and call me anytime, and that kind of thing. So
Well, that's interesting that as a black man, you knew Bobby more than
yes.
you think that people took that moment, because I think it obviously it was a pretty crappy image, I mean,
It is.
but you saw beyond that, and because you knew Bob.
Never go into a situation with a preconceived idea. But again, it goes back to that category. There's no such thing as objective journalism. You had to know where your bias was in that when it came to that particular person, and you just had to react accordingly to keep it from getting in the way.